What's going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here with James Grande, bringing you Friday's 10-game NBA DFS main slate. James, you the guy on the playbook today. You did all the work. How you feeling about it?
It was a fun breakdown. We talked about it last night in the podcast. There is a limited amount of value, and I'm talking like there is no just free plays tonight.
Well, one possible value piece we're not even sure is going to exist. So.
Right. I mean, I put in the playbook up top. If Corey Joseph is rolled out, Yogi Ferrell becomes an elite value, but Corey Joseph in his own right is very good value if he plays, but he's not free, which is what we've been accustomed to lately. Shaq Harrison the other night, 3K going for 40 fantasy points. So it's tough. I guess we can say a little value has opened up with Mike Scott and a couple Philly guys. James Ennis, he's played 20 minutes without Josh Richardson the other day, and Josh Richardson is officially ruled out. So there's a couple value pieces. You mentioned DeAndre Bembry is starting with Cam Reddish out, but there's nothing free, and there's nothing better than free. But I like this better because it's going to really show who's did the research today, and the roster construction really matters tonight.
It does really, really matter today. We've seen so many 400-plus point lineups win because you're going sort of like Uber stars and scrubs because of all the value. You won't probably see too many, Doncic Harden combos. It's possible, but you definitely take a lot more risks than you had in previous slates with everybody priced so low. So, probably a lot more fair and balanced, a lot more lineups built around one stud and not two. So, I definitely hear you there. James, what are some of the top games we're looking to stack here?
I think the primary game, I think Washington is just going to be a part of all the everyone's favorite games every slate because they play absolutely no defense. They're allowing the most fantasy points to their opponents this year. So I love that. That total actually rose to 234.5. Started at 233. That Houston.
I actually see it at 235 now too. So it's even all the way.
So even higher. Yeah, even higher in the last literally half an hour. That's awesome. I think the Clippers Houston game is going to go under, but it is at 226, and that's actually down from 228. So I think that game doesn't hit the over. But I also think it is hard to ignore 226, especially when we have totals like Boston, Denver, 206, Golden State, Utah, 208, and a 16-point spread. So we still have to get exposure to that Houston Clippers game, even if we think it goes.
We talk a lot about the late night hammer, and that game is full of DFS plays that can break open slates. You won't feel comfortable sitting at the top of a leaderboard, I don't think, heading into that late game if you don't have one of Harden, Westbrook, George, Leonard. They're all capable of going for 60-plus fantasy points, and some more than likely two of them will. So, if you don't have any exposure to those late night games, you're going to be probably in some rough shape when you wake up in the morning and thinking you won more than you did. So, any other games sticking out to you?
The Philly game is nice because San Antonio defensively has taken a nosedive. They're 28th in defensive rating now, 221.5. Cleveland, Dallas, 220.5, but it's a blowout. And then Atlanta, Detroit, 225. But other than that, it's just and I don't know how. Sacramento, Brooklyn is only 214.5, but I'm going to definitely go over on that. Considering
that game seems like an over game for
sure. 215. Brooklyn 5th in pace overall this year. Sacramento going to push the tempo, and they've been really good lately. So I'd go over there. I'm a big fan of that game.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's jump in because we got 10 games to go over. You have your playbook here in front of us with some of your top plays of the day. Let's just talk about maybe the leader in the clubhouse for the MVP. Huge price bump for him finally after being $1,500 cheaper than his counterparts, and that's Luka Doncic. How much exposure do you have of him tonight? We have a high projected ownership for him on FanDuel. DraftKings, again, no real value tonight. So a lot of these guys are in the mid to high teens. Where are you on Doncic today?
I I think he's an elite play. I don't think we need to expand on it much. We saw, like, we talk about ceiling games all the time. We don't really know what his ceiling was because he gave us 75 in 26 minutes. What happens if that was a full complement? He would have gone for 100. That is kind of where I sit. And right now, if you want to play Luka, he's fine for all formats. I think the price is still one that I'm willing to pay. And I think that, I mean, just penciling in 70 points in your lineup right now, especially on a slate with limited value, is a fine route to go. I have Luka in all formats. And I think, like, there isn't a lot of strong point guard cash plays. Like, we're going to see a lot of exposure on FanDuel to Shaq Harrison, and that's warranted 4,400. And probably on DK too at 5,000. He's probably in a lot of cash games at point guard. But, like, you're not going to play.
He's starting again, right? Probably.
He is starting. Yeah, he is starting. I mean, Chandler Hutchinson ruled out. Like, you're not going to play Russ in a cash game. He's a tournament play only. Dinwiddie I have him as listed as point guard, but he's a shooting guard over on FanDuel, so you're not going to play him there. You don't play Rozier in a cash. He's too volatile.
You don't think Dinwiddie's a cash game play?
No, I do, but I'm saying, like, if we're talking about FanDuel specifically, you have to roster 2 point guards. So
sure.
There aren't a ton of cash game plays outside of Luka, and that's kind of why I'm willing to pay the $12K, and I'm willing to take a shot at 60 fantasy points for 5X. Like, that's what we need. So, Trey Young, who I have in the playbook, not a cash game play. Tournaments.
I maybe, probably not. But I mean, this is Detroit. This is the matchup that we do love.
It's close for sure.
But I mean, like, he the GPP side of him earlier this year, where he was giving us, 60 every night for sure. But I mean, he's also settled into, like, a pretty steady 40-plus fantasy points. I would venture to consider him relatively reliable in cash games. But I mean, right. I mean, you're going to see a lot of people in cash, like they always do, treading towards the star player. So Luka, I think, for sure. And if we do find out that value with, Yogi Ferrell, he for sure on FanDuel will be the PG2 that everybody goes with.
Yeah. And I honestly, on the flip side of that, I think Corey Joseph also could be a PG2 at 4,900 on FanDuel, 4,900 on both sites, coming off a 14 assist game. So, like, I think whatever Kings point guard is starting is going to garner a lot of ownership, and it's warranted because Brooklyn's dead last against point guard.
Yep, I agree with you there. A guy that I've been high on, and obviously for good reason, because of the point total there, is Terry Rozier. Going to go up against, Isaiah Thomas, there's Smith defense. Rozier, we've seen blow up in prime matchups before. He is a relatively inconsistent play, and that's why he does go to more towards the GPP side of things. You have him in your playbook. I've already said I like him. Is he making your lineups? Is he more of a contrarian pivot play for you?
Yeah, he's fine for tournaments. I think he works perfectly in team stacks too, or game stacks rather. You pair him with Beal and Bryant or Beal and Wagner. I mean, you could do a ton of different things. There's not a lot of Charlotte guys I want to use necessarily, unfortunately, because they're very unreliable. I think Rozier, Monk, I see a lot of ownership going towards Cody Zeller and DK. That scares me, but I get it because how bad Washington's at center. But, you play Rozier, you come back with Beal. You play Rozier, you come back with Bryant. I mean, I think there's plenty of options.
Beal had no ownership last Wednesday either.
He never does, John. It's been an ongoing thing for a couple of years. People just don't trust him, but he has 4 straight games of 33 actual points or more. So it's like, all right, sure, hand me a less than 5% Bradley Beal in a 235 total. I'll take that all day.
Yep. Somebody there before we jumped on air, you said you had too much of who was desperately trying to get rid of was Rajon Rondo. He's under $5,000 on DraftKings. He's got no minutes limit. We saw him play 27 minutes against OKC the other night. Had 10 assists, 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting. Maybe the rebounding won't be there as much anymore with Anthony Davis and the guys they have there at center. But I mean, Rondo at under $5,000, the upside is certainly there for him.
The only that's just kind of the thing. The price plus the minutes, the minutes have gone up significantly every game. There's no limit, and the price is still under 5K. That's why I have too much, and I don't like it because this pace of this game is so slow, and he's so he could be so wishy-washy. I mean, we don't know we don't actually know what his role is with this team. We have no clue. They could just be getting his feet wet right now. I don't know. I just have too much exposure.
Don't you feel like that team does make, I mean, I understand LeBron with all of his triple doubles, and I feel like LeBron can still run the offense, but I feel like their team is still good with sort of Rondo on the floor with that group. If it ever comes down to it, he can still, run the offense with LeBron and Davis sort of on the wings. So
yeah, but at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but I want LeBron running my offense over maybe if this was Celtics Rondo, I'd be okay with it, but
That's fair. That's fine. Shooting guard. You mentioned him briefly as a point guard because he is point guard eligible on DraftKings. Spencer Dinwiddie, his usage rate 35% with no LeVert and Irving on the floor. That's basically James Harden-esque level. We talk about all the time. He's not James Harden, but again, 35% usage rate, 1.25 fantasy points per minute. The guy's been beasting. Gets a really good matchup here against Sacramento, and even better, honestly, if Joseph is ruled out. Yogi Ferrell, not the defensive point guard that we consider Joseph to be. Obviously not as great as De'Aaron Fox would have been, but Dinwiddie in a really smash spot here.
Yeah, I think it's a lock and load all formats. He's a core play for me today. And the thing about it is we're getting guys like Jared Allen playing really well. Taurean Prince had a really good game. If these guys don't play well, I mean, even more of the offense is going to fall on Dinwiddie's shoulders. And I don't think there's a bad, the price tag is perfectly fine. He could go for 50. He could go for 60. Just based on out of necessity for Brooklyn. So I love Dinwiddie. I think he's a lock and load for all formats.
What other guys do you want at the shooting guard spot?
We mentioned Bradley Beal. I think Bradley Beal is a super contrarian tournament play. I see 17% ownership. I don't buy it because Bradley Beal is never owned, ever. And
he's 4% against San Antonio.
Yeah, and it was a great spot against a bad Spurs defense. And now we're seeing Jimmy Butler going back to Chicago at $8,300, $1,300 less at 9%. It's another thing I'm not buying. I think that ownership is kind of flopped. I'm buying into Butler in all formats tonight. I think he's a great pivot off of the top guys. If you are building fair and balanced, I think Harden's an elite tournament play. I talk about it all the time. You're going to get him at low ownership because everyone's going to play Luka and LeBron at the top, and probably Anthony Davis because we just saw that matchup and he went off. So you're probably looking at a 10, 11, 12% Harden, and I mean, he can win you a slate if he goes for 70. So I think Harden in tournaments is fine.
Does he get Patrick Beverley defense?
I think it's Westbrook, just given their vast history against one another. I mean, they always are going up against one another. He's the one who caused Westbrook that torn meniscus in the playoffs so long ago when Westbrook and Durant were still together in OKC. I think Harden has a tough matchup with whoever he is guarded by because he could see Paul George, he could see Kawhi.
Paul George as their shooting guard the other day.
Right, but again, it's something that I'm comfortable with because there are times that there's nothing you could do, and James Harden is one of those guys that it doesn't matter who's guarding him. Sometimes it's just
he took 41 shots the other day. So
okay, and Russell Westbrook is active, so that kind of says it all for me for James Harden. If you want to play him, I think this is a slate that you get him at ownership. You're not usually going to see him at, and you can win it. I hope Bogdan plays because, again, another pace-up spot, another guy leads the Kings in usage without De'Aaron Fox and Marvin Bagley, 27.6, leads them in fantasy points per minute, 1.23, and it's a huge pace-up spot for the Kings. I would love Bogdan to play. I don't think a lot of people are going to play him because the questionable tag next to his name. Langston Galloway is going to be chalk. We talked about it on the podcast last night, and it's because minutes. It's because lack of value / minutes. That's honestly what it comes down to. he has
if you were deciding between Bogdan and Dinwiddie, both at $7,600 on DraftKings, which one do you lean?
I mean, like, everything kind of points to Bogdan, considering pace, considering matchup is better, game total or implied total is better, but like they have more options than ultimately the Nets are like, it's like Kyrie light. Like when Kyrie is out there, it's Kyrie and everyone else. Now it's Dinwiddie and everyone else.
Right.
Bogdan, I mean, they have Hield who can go off. They have Rashawn Holmes in a smash spot. They have, Namandra Bjelica, Harrison Barnes. I mean, they have a lot of guys on that roster that can contribute more than Brooklyn does, at least offensively. So I would probably lean Dinwiddie. Bogdan for a contrarian pivot. But Malik Monk is the last guy I want to. It's more exposure to this game. He's even with Nick Batum coming back. It's like he's in 24 to 28 minute range and under 5K on both sides. He's the first guy off the bench with Devontae Graham starting, or he's their first scorer off the bench. So we're gonna get a really good matchup against whoever Brooklyn decides to come off the bench. Washington decides to come off the bench with. I mean, he's a scorer. So, 25 minutes and 25 fantasy points over his last 5 games.
Play Monk over Rondo? Both guys, both 4,600?
Yeah, I think for tournaments, a game environment, I lean Monk's way. I mean, again, 235 total compared to 215.
Right.
And, yeah, I would lean
He's more
Monk
of an
over
offensive
Rondo.
player where Rondo
Yes, correct.
Okay. Small forward.
Gross.
It's Paul George, right?
Paul George. It's Paul George. And I just tweeted it out not too long ago, but like anyone who's like questioning anything about Paul George and playing next to Kawhi is insane. Like he literally was an MVP top 2 maybe at his peak last year, playing against. Harden's probably the most ball dominant player in the NBA, but Westbrook is probably 2. And he played alongside him and was an MVP candidate. So we're getting Paul George at 8,100 coming off a 37-minute game. Yeah. We're getting Paul George at 8,600 on FanDuel coming off a 37. I mean, it's a lock and load for me. Yeah. He is like my favorite play of the slate. I think you could play LeBron if you want. I think LeBron is another guy that you're going to get at a low ownership. He's just triple-double, consistent. He's going to get you 60 on any given night, obviously. But it's a really weak position. I don't have a lot of guys written up. I think Harrison Barnes is fine at 5,500 on FanDuel. I think that's a solid price tag. Yeah. I like Alec Burks is a small forward on FanDuel, 6K. Going back to Utah, they only have 8 active guys.
Yeah.
He's fine. Tim Hardaway becomes a play for me if Seth Curry ends up sitting. He's still ill. There was no report on him playing. No, there's really nothing on Seth Curry other than the fact he's still sick. And then Davis Bertans as a GPP play, playing 28 minutes a game, coming off the bench. I mean, I'm sorry, but like Troy Brown's just not doing it right now, and they're leaning Bertans. Plus, Hachimura is going to get in foul trouble like he does every night, and Bertans is going to be able to play the backup 4. So like there's minutes at the 3 and there's minutes at the 4 for Bertans, and another player in that 235 game total.
We got a question in chat here wanting to know about Miles Bridges.
I think Miles Bridges is interesting because of his price. He's only 5K on DK, and in theory, like they're starting to kind of go away from PJ Washington, and Marvin Williams has never really carved out a role. And we're seeing Bridges more at the 4 now. Like we're seeing him earlier at the 3.
I wish they weren't playing Batum as much.
I agree. And I know he came back and like suddenly they're just like, hey, Nick, like welcome back. Play all the minutes you can handle. And I agree. It's a little frustrating because he shouldn't be playing that many minutes. So I think Bridges is like fine. I don't have like the strong will to play him, but again, I'm not going to tell you no to play a guy in a 235 game total. It's like clear cut. That's the thing about this game. It is clear cut the number 1 game on the slate, and you want to get exposure to this game. I would only play him in tournaments, but I think
that's what surprised me the other night was with San Antonio and Washington was that
no ownership.
No ownership on DeRozan, no ownership on Beal. So we're sitting here saying that it should be the clear-cut game given the game total, and that paid out. They were at 280 or 270, but nobody was on it for whatever reason. So there's like a weird stigma behind Washington or the players in these games are on.
There shouldn't be. There shouldn't be.
But the points are scored. So I mean, I definitely, I was kicking myself because I too was, faded that last game, even though initially I liked those players in the low ownership. So I'll be interested to see if that comes through again in a game where you said we should all like it. High total, gonna probably go over, and the spread's not too bad. So power forward position. What are we doing with Andy Davis? Because he just faced OKC, and he lit him up for 60. So, what are we doing here, James?
You can read my.
I'm reading the playbook, but what are we doing?
Tournaments, GPPs, not cash. That's all I got to say. I mean, he was terrible. He was dead in the water. Shoulder clearly killing him, ribs clearly killing him, and then he dominates. He takes 24 shots. He looks like last year's version. He looks like why everyone took him first or second in all season long leagues.
It's a perfect game for him to go to the locker room in the first quarter.
Perfect game, and that's why I think there are better cash game plays. You can obviously play him in tournaments. I think this position is really strong though. So if you want to go elsewhere, I think the position is very elite.
The last time we called somebody a must play of the slate was Blake Griffin against Chicago, and they got absolutely blown out of the water there. Griffin only played like 25 minutes, and he did not come through and cost you
a lot of money.
A lot of money, potentially.
A lot of money.
It's not that he lost you money, you were negative that night, but where you should have finished had just a good game had not a snowflake been next to the name of Blake Griffin on Wednesday. You might not even be on this live stream. You might be on vacation somewhere.
Thousands of dollars coming my way.
Things were close. But Atlanta, just as bad in the front court. Jabari Parker. I mean, they're not playing Alex Len anymore, so we can't really rag on him. But is it Jones? Damon Jones is their center. I mean, this should be another kill spot for Blake. The price is up on him a little bit more. Yeah. How do you feeling?
I mean, we can't let recency bias get the best of us, so it's a great play. I mean, from a usage standpoint, it's 35%. From a fantasy point per minute standpoint, 1.2 a minute. There's nothing wrong with the play. Mm-hmm. You just have to navigate through the rest of the position because it's so good. It's so strong. I mean, on FanDuel, you play Bam Adebayo for whatever reason is still a power forward.
Bam is so good.
In an elite spot.
What's interesting? And I know we crap on FanDuel for their positions. And I went to Basketball Reference.
30%. I saw it. 30% at power forward. I saw it. I looked at it too. But
it doesn't make up for it. But
right. More than he has been playing time at. Yeah. I mean, but you also think about it. Who knows what position Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard, Bam are actually playing? They could literally. They're all the same height. They're all
which makes it weird that Bam is also just the center on DraftKings.
It is super strange. I think we would both be more okay with it if he was power forward center eligible on
DraftKings. Make my lineup a lot easier.
But I think the price tag on Bam, it's $1,100 more than Blake, but we get one of the best rebounding matchups on the board against Chicago, and we know Bam plays 35 plus minutes in a close game. It's a great spot. I mean, I told you that I'm basically locking in Richaun Holmes in every lineup I have tonight. And you should be too, because our number one rule for the 3 years that we've done the podcast and the 2 years that we've done this live stream has been attacking Brooklyn centers. And they're not playing DeAndre Jordan a ton of minutes. They're still playing Jared Allen all the minutes. So it's still the same spot we've had for the last 2 years. And Richaun Holmes has 50-point upside. I mean, 20 and 15 last game. We know the block upside. You've talked ad nauseum about his block, his ability to block shots, and Jared Allen's a guy who plays near the rim. So I think Richaun Holmes is elite. I think Nemanja Bjelica is a really good tournament play. I think Bjelica could be used in cash games. 30 minutes, he gets you 30 fantasy points. It's a really good position. I haven't even mentioned Eric Paschall, who's going to play all the minutes. I haven't mentioned Paul Millsap, who's at home against Boston, who struggles against one position and one position only, and that's power forward. Porzingis against Cleveland, it's an elite position. So like, if you don't want to go Blake, I understand. If you want to play Blake in tournaments and leverage the field, that's fine. But it's an elite position. So there's a lot of different routes. I think the best route is Richaun Holmes, but I think there are a lot of different routes altogether.
Yeah, I agree with you. Over at center, we mentioned Bam already, so we don't really need to go too much, I don't think, talking about it because, again, I absolutely love him at $8,000 over on DraftKings. Desperately trying to figure out ways to get him in my lineup. How are you feeling? When we went over this at the podcast, and the ownership percentages are there. Joel Embiid is only $9,300 on DraftKings. Now, obviously, he's a top price center on FanDuel. There's reasons to fade him there. But at $9,300 against the Spurs, we've talked about it, already this year. We went over his pricing on DraftKings where he's in this like low 9K range. He has absolutely smashed.
Yep.
5X is only 45 fantasy points. This guy gets that in his sleep. How are you not playing Joel Embiid tonight on DraftKings?
I mean, I think this is like the spend up that goes completely overlooked and can smash. Jakob Poeltl is definitely a better defender than Aldridge / Trey Lyles. That's very clear. But again, this is another one of those guys. We talked about it, James Harden before. If Embiid is going well, Poeltl could have 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes of this game, and then we don't have to worry about it because then we're getting Aldridge and Trey Lyles. You want
that with a player with 100-point upside? I mean, he's gone for 100 points.
He's literally gone for 100. And I mentioned earlier, the Spurs are 29th in defensive rating. Like, this is not 28th rather. This is not the same Spurs team we're accustomed to seeing defend. Like, they don't play defense. And Embiid has a 33% usage. We know he's going to get the ball like every time down, at least a touch. And 1.52 fantasy point per minute. Like that's as elite as it comes. Yeah. So I think he's a really, really strong contrarian pivot. I think even 10-1 on FanDuel is probably too cheap, John. Like,
yeah, you only need 55 out of that.
And like over there, we have Capella who's 9-1. So for $1,000 more you can go get Embiid, who has probably higher upside than Capella. Now, $7,700 for Clint Capella is a
5 straight games with 20 rebounds.
Is quite the price tag, and his ownership percentages are indicative of it. But like, he's elite, and I think it's a very small player pool. I know Sean Mitchell mentioned Tristan Thompson to us earlier today. I'm not so much on him. I get it. The price tag on DraftKings is really good. I would rather play someone like Thomas Bryant, who has the best. According to DVP, has the best spot against the center position, and his teammate Mo Wagner, 4,300 on FanDuel, 4,700 on DK. I mean, we saw 50. Yes, granted, it was in a blowout, but he's playing 20 to 25 minutes. So, also, why the frick haven't we gotten Kings news? Can we please get Kings news?
We just got Nets news, but Alan Crabbe's still limited to 25 minutes.
Well. Good thing Alan Crabbe plays for Atlanta now.
Oh, he does. Doesn't play for the Nets anymore.
That's how irrelevant Alan Crabbe is. But, I mean, honestly, like, we need the Kings news because
I need to know if Yogi's playing. If he's not playing, I have to fix a lot of things in 25 minutes. So,
yes. I didn't mention just a couple guys I have written up at top that I just want to quickly go over. I didn't mention Omari Spellman. Or Marquise Chris. I think the 4 active players that Golden State has tonight are all in play in some capacity. Spellman is the lock and load on FanDuel, $3,700. He's going to be the chalk. I think you just eat that chalk at $3,700. He played 28 minutes last game. We need 18 fantasy points from him. He can easily do that. I think Chris is fine for tournaments as well. I told you off air that I was a little scared of like his propensity to foul whoever he's guarding, and that doesn't really like waver for me here. I mean, if he ever matches up with the Gobert is going to eat him alive, or Bogdan is very skilled offensively. So I think Chris is only tournaments. I think Kawhi is fine for tournaments. I think Patrick Beverley is fine for tournaments. I'm just rattling names off right now because we didn't go over all of them.
If we need another pun play, you talked a little bit. Corey Joseph will play. There it is. So
$4,900. It's a really good play against Brooklyn. So I think, and we're gonna get Bogdan news right after that. I don't Bogdan.
No, Caruso.
Well, no one cares about Caruso.
No one cares about Caruso.
Were you going Mike's? Were you about to go Mike Scott?
Mike Scott.
Josh Richardson didn't play last game. Not playing again. Mike Scott played 24. I mean, Mike Scott has a prominent role in this rotation already. So I think Mike Scott 3,500 on DK is a.
Would you switch to Mike Scott if you had your heart set? Bogdan will be a true game time decision.
That is great news. I think if Bogdan doesn't play, Buddy Hield becomes a really good pivot. I think they're like Hield.
Does Yogi still become a thing if Bogdan doesn't play? Do they play?
Probably because Bogdan's been running point guard when Corey Joseph's not on the floor. We could also just see them run Corey Joseph ragged and he could play 40 minutes. So
would you play Mike Scott if you had your heart set on playing Yogi Ferrell for that news?
I would because it's similar price. And I think Mike Scott, as we said it, Mike Scott has like 30-point upside. He doesn't have 40-point upside. But then again, I think Yogi had 30-point upside if he were to start. So I think I would play Mike Scott. It's scary. Tournaments only, but it's value that's opened up, and I definitely don't hate it.
Alrighty. Any final thoughts here before we close this shop?
No, I mean, we got pretty much everything that we were hoping for. I mean, we needed Kings news. We got Kings news. Yep. Obviously, there's always chance that someone gets late scratch. We have Anthony Davis on the slate. We have, the Joel Embiid on a back-to-back, first night of a back-to-back. We have the Clippers on the slate. There's always a chance someone in the Clippers sits. So, obviously, it's Friday. You might be up later than normal. So just stay by your phone, stay by your computer, see the news, and all the content's out for tonight. And lineups are out. Maybe some tweaks. So if you are playing the example lineups, make sure you follow chat to see if I make any updates.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Later, guys.